45 years, zero name changes, new offices, more staff, improved technology to better serve you. Education, services, investments. Think real estate, think Marshall Reddick. Brokerage, property management, private lending, creating financial independence through real estate since 1979. Thank you everybody for joining us. Very excited to get started on this topic. Topic we're going over is building wealth, a comparative look at modern investment in asset classes. And my name is Cameron. I'll be presenting alongside
Chris
and
Brian.
Yes, sir.
Brian, I don't know if you want to quickly introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your history and how you found Marshall Reddick.
Yeah, totally. It's been a super long journey. Been here for a long time. No, but I'm fairly new. So I started in real estate 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, just with a traditional brokerage. And right off the bat, it's been so amazing to learn just how we could better serve clients at Marshall Reddick. I think it's an amazing thing where we're a full service rather than just your traditional buying and selling, which is really amazing. And there's multiple different divisions that we'll go into if you don't know what we do here at Marshall Reddick, but just has been amazing. So I have 30 plus transaction history in my first couple years of real estate, background in business ownership. So right after college, I actually jumped right into owning a business, a gym business, which was awesome. Right after that, just jumped straight into real estate, and it's been amazing. And a couple of things I like to do in my free time, just for a fun fact, love basketball, fishing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, really anything outdoors I absolutely love. And then it says here on my slide that I'm the best golfer at Marshall Reddick. Not sure that one's true. I think my buddy Cam put that in there.
You're the best left-handed
golfer.
Yeah, I think that's the one sport I haven't really got down, but it's good to learn how to get better at something, right? So
oh my gosh. Super stoked to be with you guys today. My name's Cameron. I'm a licensed realtor here in Orange County. I went to school locally here too. For those of you who know Vanguard, go Lions. I have a primary here in Orange County, in Yorba Linda. I was actually born and raised in Yorba Linda. Went back to Yorba Linda. Married my high school sweetheart. We have a little 10-month-old baby girl, so just pray for us. It's definitely a crazy season. Chris kind of mentioned it, but we practice what we preach in the sense that a lot of us don't just work here, we also invest here. So Brian invests with Marshall Reddick. I also invest with Marshall Reddick, whether it's real estate or it's Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund. Chris also does the same, and that's just a part of us believing in what we talk about. Sales volumes about 45 million year to date this year. And I'm also not the best golfer. If you look at the three of us, Chris is actually the best golfer, but someone put that in there that I'm the best golfer. So I will be someday. I just need a little more practice.
I think the reason I get to put best golfer is because I'm the oldest, and with time comes experience. So I guess that's why I get denoted as the best golfer. But not to speak or harp too much on myself, but I've closed real estate transactions in a number of states, including obviously Illinois, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, California, and have really just been blessed to do a lot of residential real estate investing. I originally found out about real estate in Chicago and practiced there for about 10 years before moving to Southern California for the much, 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 much better weather. And like Cameron mentioned, I invest in out-of-state real estate as well as lend with Marshall Reddick Real Estate. So I'm a huge proponent of what we do here because it's helped launch not just my career, but also increase my wealth as a real estate investor. But before we really dig into today's webinar topics, Brian, do you want to talk a little bit more about what we do as a full service brokerage? Like, we're full service, so what does that entail?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of previously what I was talking about. Full service is just amazing because I come from that traditional brokerage. And now I'm getting to see like how we could service in so many different areas, which is just amazing to me. So you have your traditional buying and selling of primary residence, and then also investment properties that we take care of. Then go into property management. This is really amazing because this is an opportunity to connect with landlords and also take so much of a headache away from them in a lot of points. So we take care of leasing, any kind of renovations, and really anything you could think of property management wise, rent collection, just everything. So, and our goal there is like, hey, how can we have our landlords collect a check every month and they don't have to think too much about it? It's just taken care of and they have that rental income coming.
Which is
So,
huge.
super huge, right? It could be a big headache, and we pride ourselves on being able to take on that task and serving our landlords well. So
Cam, I know that when you first started, you started working in the private lending department with Pat, our director of private lending. So if you're probably best suited to talk a little bit more about the behind the scenes of private money lending and kind of how that is connected with the investment fund.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I kind of like to say, you see here, there's 4 divisions of the company. Even though, private lending can be bundled together, I also think it's separate. So when I first started, I actually started as an underwriter for our private lending team. So I'd underwrite loans to figure out what's the max loan to value, renovation value, how much renovation funds we can give, what's the draw schedule. And it was really cool to be a part of that, to like fully understand the lending side and what we do in the lending side. So you as the investor, maybe you can't qualify for a conventional loan, right? Maybe you are investing in your self-directed IRA, and you would need private money lending, and that's where Marshall Reddick comes in. It's essentially like no red tape lending, and I'm happy to talk more with you about what that looks like for you as the investor. But it's an alternative option to conventional lending if you can't go that route. I always recommend starting conventional. And then the other side of that is, okay, now you borrowed money for us. Where do you get the money from? Well, that also comes from us and you as the investor. So the Marshall Reddick Investment Fund, the Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund, essentially is a pool of capital of all of the investors like us. In the same way that you can collect a rent check for a property you own, instead, you now collect a mortgage payment for a mortgage that you have the note on. So that's the other side of what we do, and you collect quarterly return with the investment fund. It's around 8 to 9%, depending on the waterfall and how much you have invested. But yeah, it's really cool, and pretty sure you're also an investor in the fund.
Yeah, definitely. I own real estate investing or real estate properties out of state, and although we have designed it to be as passive as possible, and the IRS looks at it as passive income, it's not always passive. I have a tenant that just moved out of my house right now, going through some renovations, putting it back on the market for rent, and that requires some communication and some capital out of pocket. But at the end of the day, the Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund truly is like as passive as it can get, and I really like it for that from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is our beautiful team here. So you've got our some of our California team members in the top right, bottom right, some of our Texas team members, also top left Texas team members, and then the bottom middle is our Nashville and Clarksville team. Bottom left is our Florida team. And we are located across the nation in several metros. Brian, why don't you talk to us about where we're at?
yeah, so we're in the Orange County office here today, Newport. And as you can see on the screen there, there's just multiple different areas. So it's very cool because what we're able to do as a company as well is, hey, if there's a property that, you want to sell, then we also have options to do like a 1031 and go to these other states, understanding those markets, looping other people in, and then making an educated decision on where is my investment going to go.
Absolutely. One thing that I don't see here, we just opened a new market in Dallas, so that'll be added to the next one. But we're throughout Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and California.
Now, I obviously think that this is an incredibly important slide, like how to choose where to invest. These are really distinct features of every market that we're invested in. What is, I really don't think these are listed in order of importance, but as someone that invests in real estate yourself, Cameron, what particular aspect would you highlight as maybe like the one that you focus on the most is really being important to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think honestly, when I'm looking at this list, is it landlord friendly, right? What are the laws for you as a landlord versus the tenants? I think we all know that Los Angeles is very tenant friendly, and it's difficult to be a landlord there, especially if you have rent control or if you have just cause evictions or difficult situations. Whereas if you're in like Tennessee or Texas or Florida, it's like, if the tenant doesn't cooperate, they don't really have as many laws to protect them as opposed to the landlord's rights and laws. And then, what's the economic diversity? You don't want to be in a market where it's like they only have one thing and maybe it's tech. And if the tech industry goes down, so does the entire market. A lot of the markets that you'll see we're in is very diverse. There's usually a lot of government jobs, military, medical, tech, just a lot of big industries all together in one place. And that makes a strong market, because then if one thing goes down, you still have several other pillars to keep it going, especially when you see like those government jobs that aren't going to go down. So those are important to me. What about you, Brian? What sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and investing, especially for a first time, housing affordability is huge.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think personally for myself, when I'm looking at those markets, that's a huge deal for me. Obviously, everything you hit on, but that first step is like, okay, where with the funds that I have, what makes the most sense, and how affordable can it be for me?
Yeah.
So, 100%. I think one that's kind of a little that goes under the radar is the strong education on here. Like some people are like, why is educated people important, right? I mean, to me, what that means is folks that are educated in whatever market that you're investing in, right? It means good quality universities, good quality school systems. Generally denotes, if you're in the suburban environment, low crime, right? That's good. But also the folks that are being educated, that are getting master's degrees, that are getting professional degrees, are going to turn into primary home buyers. They're also going to turn into really high, strong quality tenants that are willing and able, most importantly, to pay high rents, right? So now those renters are going to eventually turn into home buyers, ideally. Now, what lifts your property as an investment long term? It's appreciation. Cash flow is nice. My home cash flows, but that like $150 a month isn't, getting me rich, right? But what does hopefully add to my net worth over time is 4, 5, 6% appreciation. And the only way that can happen is if there's high demand, right? There's affordability, but there's also people that can afford and qualify for that property. And I think education plays a really important dynamic, like part of that puzzle.
Very well said. And one thing here that wasn't mentioned, and honestly, it's cool because it's a good little like checks and balances, reliable property management. Easiest way to know if your market has reliable property management is to see how many property managers there are. I mean, it's so often someone calls me and it's out of our geographical map of where it can manage. It's like three hours away from our office. And they're like, well, I only have 2 property managers. The one I just fired, they're doing a bad job. And the other one has 1 stars online. It's like, well, it's probably not a good market if there's not a lot of management companies. You want it to be competitive. You want a lot of management companies that have affordable pricing, but also quality service. If they know that you're only stuck with them or someone else, it doesn't really matter how good of service they have. And usually the better markets have a good amount of property management companies in general.
Absolutely.
So this here is a map of, we're talking about one of our markets today that we're going to be mentioning briefly is San Antonio. This is a map of properties under management, whether they're like single families, multifamily. Each dot represents a property that we manage. And it really shows you that where are investors targeting? And you're going to see it's the suburbs. There aren't a lot of really densely located areas in the middle of a city, right? And often that's just because they're either more expensive or they're not as nice of an area, maybe they don't cash flow well. But then you go to those suburbs where you have nice school districts, a little bit newer, a little bit more land, a little better overall condition, neighborhoods, A class, B class. That's where you see a lot of people targeting. And I do see one dot here that looks very familiar. Chris, tell us about that dot.
Yeah, that one right by the Air Force Base is by Lackland Air Force Base is my little house that I have in San Antonio. As an investment property. So obviously, as I mentioned, I'm located here in Orange County, but I have investment property out of state, one of which is in San Antonio. And, I personally, just speaking for myself, targeted this particular area because the school systems are pretty good, but it's right next to the Air Force Base, which is a major employer in the San Antonio market. It's one of those employers that, historically has been there for a very long time. Unlikely to really go anywhere in the future, a really steady tenant base, and is also pretty close proximity, about 30 minutes outside of the downtown area, 40 minutes or so. So I do attract other folks other than just military tenants. You do want to have a diversification of tenant pool. But that's definitely a feature of mine. It's also tends to be newer construction, as you mentioned, less maintenance. The inner core of San Antonio specifically, where you don't see a ton of dots, and tends to be older construction, which is why you don't see a lot of our investors target those particular areas. So, and last but not least, there's a little HOA in that pocket, which keeps a secondary eye on my house outside of just property management. They let me know when my tenants aren't mowing the grass, which is great. So
It's always important.
but this is, a high level what we're going to learn and discuss today. How to define your investor profile. Like I mentioned from my personal experience, on my investment profile at my age with my net worth is going to be vastly different than Brian's or Cameron's or someone that's 55 or 65 that's looking for something else. So we're going to talk about how to define your investor profile, what questions you should be asking yourself. The difference in property classes, really, really crucial to talk about. Cash flow versus appreciation strategy, multifamily, residential, and then which markets might you be attracted to depending upon your criteria and your profile as an investor. Maybe that's Orange County, San Antonio, or one of our other markets. And then last but not least, we're going to go over some real world property picks. We've got a couple of on market properties as well as a listing that our team just sold here locally, to give you some examples of how to analyze cash flow, looking at a pro forma, and why that particular asset may be attractive to you or to another investor.
Absolutely.
So where do you fit as an investor, right? These are the questions that I think we ask our clients all the time, but I think if you're on this call, you should be asking yourself this and write these answers down if you don't already know the answers, which are, what are your financial goals? Like, are you looking more for just cash flow, income from an investment property? Are you looking for long-term appreciation? Do you want a balance of both? I think a lot of our investors look for balance of both. Risk tolerance is really, really huge to understand, right? I think people look at real estate investing as, maybe sometimes some people look at it as really scary. Some people look at it as like, I'm never going to get involved with this. And they don't really understand, that there's support team to help you. But on the other side of things, some people can go into it like with the blinders completely on and not really know what risks there are out there. So that's our job, is to help educate you, but also for you to know what type of aggressive or conservative or balanced investing approach that you want to have. Brian, you mentioned this, like capital is a pretty big, crucial factor, right? I'd love to own some beachfront property in Hawaii, but I don't know if I'm quite there yet, right? Like that would be a great investment, but I don't know if the capital is quite there. So, what type of financing capacity do you guys have? The time horizon is crucial too. When I look at investing, I look at it from my age. I'm almost 40, so I'm looking at, 15 to 20 year time horizons, looking at my ideal retirement age. But some people have a shorter, time horizon or even longer. So you're super young, Cameron. You might have like a 40-year time horizon. And then time, of course, is a huge commitment. So depending on your answers to those questions, you see all these little arrows here, and that's going to tell you what path, right? What type of property class, what price you're going to look at. It's going to influence your criteria, and those are your criteria that are highlighted in the arrows.
Yeah, absolutely. And we keep saying class. Well, what is the property class? How do we understand a property class? And the easiest way I can explain it, I'm actually going to jump ahead a slide. A property class is determined by the median home price in a metropolitan statistical area, or the MSA, right? And this is on the National Association of Realtors, and they basically take all of the median home prices. So like Orange County, San Antonio, Nashville, right? What is that median home price? And then how does the home you're looking at, or the home that you own, compare to that median? That's where we really get what a property class is. And I'm going to jump forward one more, just so I can give you an example. So let's just say we are in Orange County, and let's just say, for easy numbers, the median home price is $1 million, right? So if we're looking at this property class scale, any property that's value is between $1 million and $1.3 million, which is 100% of the median home price and 130% of the median home price, that's an A-class property, right? Anything that's over 1.3, we're now luxury. Anything between $1 million and $800,000, or 100% and 80%, you're in B class, and then as you see the scale, so on and so forth. And then when it comes to multifamily, it's a little lower as you add doors, the percentage goes down, but essentially it's the same thing. So why does that matter, right? Why does that matter? Well, I like to think of easy analogy here. Think of A class as appreciation. A equals appreciation. And C class is more cash flow, where maybe B class is a little bit of both. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when you have an A class property, so if you have that $1.2 million property, it's probably not going to cash flow right off the bat, right? Or if it does, it's going to be very close to break even. However, you're going to see a lot more appreciation, like Chris mentioned, that long-term wealth gain over time. And especially if you go in that luxury class range. So you're seeing here, that's going to be like high-end neighborhoods, right? And you also have to factor in the kind of renters that you're going to see in these type of homes, right? If they are in an A luxury class neighborhood, they're probably executive level, managers. Maybe they're business owners, right? They make really good income because they have to afford to live in these neighborhoods. They're going to take better care of your home. They're probably going to stay a little bit longer. They're going to put the drain catcher in, right? They're just overall higher quality renters. And that's what you can expect with an A class, where if you go to C class, the values are a lot lower. So you might have a little bit more cash flow because the price you purchased it versus the rents, your fixed expenses now, are going to be a little easier to cash flow. However, you're not going to have that same appreciation. And that's okay, because there are investors where their preference is, I just want cash flow today. I want a steady income every single month. I'm okay sacrificing a little bit of appreciation, right? So that's just deciding for you what it is that you're looking for. What's your tolerance? And have some more examples. Like B class are going to be like that middle income area. C class are, working class neighborhoods with, a little bit more tenant turnover. And we'll talk more about the variable expenses over time. But yeah, that's kind of the sliding scale. I know I said a lot. Anything to add?
No, I was going to say the only thing you didn't mention is D class, but I think D class stands for don't do it. It's not. And I think it's something that you get into if you're really, really experienced. At least the folks that I know that have had some experience with D class, they've had high levels of experience and are incredibly well capitalized in order to get into that type of area. I would say most of our investors are folks that are looking at A and B class because they're going to make a lot more in their day-to-day jobs, right, than managing the really intensive process of owning D class properties. A class properties, you can really have that more of a set it, forget it, collect a rent check. Then a D class property is going to be the opposite experience and be very, very little appreciation long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. D is for don't do it. Don't forget that. Brian, tell us about, I keep mentioning C class cash flow, A class appreciation. Why go one? Why go the other?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think it depends on what your goals are and what you're looking for in a property. So understanding those goals on the beginning slides is really important. And I think it depends on your age and your goals too. So for me, I'm not super concerned about a ton of cash flow. I don't have a ton of capital. So when I'm looking at my investments, I'm going, hey, what property can I buy so it'll appreciate over time, right? And some of you guys might be in that same position, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of our clients are kind of in the middle. They could go one way or the other, but a lot it's like they're looking at cash flow and appreciation. It could go either way, but
Balance of both. Yeah, I think a balance of both is really critical for many of our clients. They need to have the cash flow there to be present so that it covers, the fixed costs of owning the property, like your mortgage, your insurance, your interest, your taxes, all of that, as well as covering, upcoming maintenance, upcoming vacancy, but also having that bonus of appreciation, which is why we're in a lot of the markets that we're in, because they offer that blended both. Like San Antonio is a perfect market for that, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail for sure.
Totally. We mentioned we're just going to talk about asset classes, right? We've got property types here. So when you hear the word multifamily, some people think, is it duplex multifamily? Is it fourplex multifamily? What are the technical terms, right? Well, essentially you have residential, and residential the way that I kind of qualified is anything that qualifies for a 30-year fixed loan, right? So that's going to be a 1 to 4 unit property. So if you have a single family, a condo, a townhome, a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, you can still get a 30-year fixed mortgage. The second you step up to 5 units, you can no longer get that 30-year fixed mortgage. Now you're looking at like balloon payments or interest only loans. Maybe it's like a 5-year, maybe it's adjustable rate mortgage. Exactly. And so now you're in the multifamily range. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just know what you're expecting. The pros of having a 30-year fixed mortgage is you're going to have the same payments for 30 years. If you refi, it's going to be the same type of loan. Whereas if you have multifamily, you might have to consider every, 4 to 7 years, you're going to have to figure out, okay, is the interest rate market in a place where I can refinance? Should I refinance now or should I wait 2 years until the balloon payment comes due? How is that going to affect my cash flow? There's just a little bit more playing around with it. And oftentimes you're going to see a little more cash flow in general in multifamily because it's not as much of an appreciation play because you've kind of eliminated primary residence buyers. Whereas a 1 to 4, you can still be a primary residence buyer, live in the property, more likely single family duplex, and rent the other units out with a 30-year fixed mortgage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think this kind of comes back to the risk reward aspects. Understand your risk profile. Multifamily 5+ units, it can be really capital intensive. We've got economies of scale on here, but even though you might be able to buy, so say your average single family home in Orange County is $1 million, just to use your analogy, right? And a duplex is $1.3 million, right? Well, divide 1.3 divided by 2, 1.3 million divided by 2. It's obviously on a per unit cheaper, right? And that goes up and up and up as we go down the list, right? It might be 10 million for a 20 unit building, right? So now we're talking about $500,000 per unit. Well, the problem and concern that may come from is how much capital are you going to be able to accrue, right? In order to buy that 10 or $20 million property for a multifamily. So if you've got the capital, that's great. But the other aspect that you talked about, which is the financing component, a 30-year fixed mortgage is a major reason why people invest in real estate. Is just the certainty of knowing that your payment's not going to change. I think commercial financing, especially over the last handful of years, has really put people on kind of the back, heel, right? Because financing has changed, or at least interest rates has changed so dramatically over the last few years that if you do get forced into a situation where you have to refinance, that can be a pretty scary proposition.
Yeah,
sure, for multifamily. So really understand that component before you kind of jump head over heels into the multifamily because you're looking strictly for cash flow.
Totally. And I like this last one here about what is your experience in, your scale goals. If you've been investing and you have, 10, 15 properties at this point, and you're like, man, I kind of want to condense. It's a lot of individual properties in different places. Sometimes it makes sense to get a multifamily.
Absolutely.
Go get a 10-unit building and sell, 4 or 5 of your other properties and condense it. Now it's all in one place. It's a little bit easier, and you won't feel the vacancy as much. If you have a single family, tenant moves out, you're going to feel it until that new renter's in, where you can absorb it a lot better when you have multiple units that are still paying the income, and now it's only a portion of that income received that's not felt until the tenants move back in.
Well, let's talk a little bit about maybe the challenges here. I think it doesn't need to be harped on too much, but single family homes in general are just going to attract longer term family tenants, right? Where are single family homes located? They tend to be located in suburban markets, better school systems, versus multifamily markets, not necessarily better school systems, typically speaking, the way that most metropolitan areas are set up. Small multis, you get I think a bit of blend, right? There's definitely small multifamilies, especially in our Southern California market, where you see 2 to 4 units, kind of pocketed in single family communities. We live in the Orange area, and that's definitely the case for totally. Right? But larger multifamily is going to have higher turnover. Why? Because a single 1-bedroom or a studio or a 2-bedroom is much more likely to size up and move into that 3-bedroom far more frequently than that person that's in that 3 or 4-bedroom home that's nestled in. They got their kids in the school system, and they're not moving anywhere until their kids graduate from high school, right? So you might have a tenant for 10 to 15 years. That's not uncommon for sure for a single family property. Now, you have some familiarity with this, Cameron, which is at scale, multifamily can justify on-site managers. Like, talk about how that might impact an owner's experience?
Yeah, so there are pros and cons to everything. There are definitely pros to having an on-site, manager. So if you have a property, you got 15 or more units, oftentimes you're probably going to have someone that's full-time on-site manager. Now it's like an extra boots on the ground. Different than your property manager. Your property manager manages that on-site, but it's someone that's always there. They're keeping the common areas clean. They're making sure that people are doing what they're doing. Think of it like a glorified HOA, but like even better, right? And so it's just really that upkeep of your property, and there's a lot of pros to it. Then again, there are expenses that come with it. Now you have to pay an on-site manager's salary. Now they're a physical employee, right? And what happens when they move out and you feel that vacancy? Who's going to take over for that? Maybe they're your handyman at the same time. So I think, if you have a good property manager, it makes sense. If you have the time and you know what you're doing, you manage those on-sites yourself, it makes sense. But if you're trying to jump into multifamily and now you have an on-site manager and you also have a full-time job, maybe you're a surgeon and you just don't have the capacity to manage it, you're going to start to see it fall apart and crumble. It's going to be very difficult. So I would say if you're comfortable and this is what you want to do, get a good property manager. Interview multiple property managers. Ask them as many questions as possible. What's their experience with the on-site? Because there's a lot of pros that can come with it. But if you don't manage it correctly, it's gonna be difficult. We see it happen too often. Someone says, "Hey, I've been trying to self-manage this for the last couple of years. The on-site isn't paying rent, and this is going on, and this hasn't been done correctly, and everything's falling apart." And it's like, oh, now it's going to take us 12 months just to get the property where it should be, so we can actually start managing the property. So, yeah, that's really critical.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we've got a few different markets here that we're going to talk about. 3 different markets, 3 different profiles. Brian, I know you're a little bit more familiar now with the Orange County market. Like, how would you describe, your experience so far in the Orange County market?
I mean, I love it. It's great here. No, for those that don't know, I'm from the Palm Springs area, so it's definitely different. Moving to the Orange County market, you could see it in the price point and just everything. Even as I was kind of looking through it at first a while back, it's like, man, this is way different than that.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, 600 gets you this here, and then back home, it's like, oh, it's it looks a lot better back home, So it's really cool to see those differences, and you could see why and see the differences in the market. Just how many more people are here. Obviously being by the water, helps a little bit. Those prices increasing, and a lot of people just want to be here, so it's great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we talked about education and white collar jobs that lead to appreciation. I feel like Orange County is like the best possible example of that, right? Which is like, we have incredible universities in Orange County and in LA, of course, as well as incredible employers here, and it's amazingly diverse, right? I mean, we're in Newport Beach, but across from us is Irvine, and of course like Anaheim and all the beach communities. So we get to kind of see it all and work with clients from all different aspects. But there's one thing in common, which is they live here, and usually generally have a great income, and can afford to pay the high mortgages and be incredible tenants as well.
Yeah. Totally.
We have incredibly low default rates from tenants in the Orange County market, incredibly low eviction rates because our tenants can't afford to pay those rents. So in San Antonio, I own an investment property over there, as I've been speaking on. And the thing that obviously drew it to me over there is because of the affordability. I also think there's a lot of runway for appreciation. That's also important for me, because as much as I can talk about the benefits of Orange County, can I say with such an honest face, like, oh, it's going to continue to run up at 7, 10, 15% a year in appreciation like it has over the last handful of years? Like, I don't know if I can say that. But San Antonio, however, has just been steady Eddie 4 to 5 to 6% a year, and it hasn't really skipped a beat. Even when we had the great financial crisis in 2008, there was just a small, tiny window where I think it had like a negative 1%, right? Which is super unique and incredibly rare across the country. So on top of that, you've got some cash flow benefits, as well as being really, really landlord friendly. Cameron, do you want to talk a little bit about your familiarity with Nashville?
Nashville's amazing. For those of you who have been there, it is such a fun place to be. I like that we have a little bit of a spread, right? I would say Orange County is kind of like really, really high price. Obviously, if we're looking at investments here, the average person that's investing in Orange County is probably starting with like a condo or townhome or a lower price single family. When you go to San Antonio, you have that wiggle room. You can now get a 2 to 4 unit and still half the price of, you know, a townhome here or single family here in California. So when you look at like, you know, what kind of asset makes sense for you, it also depends on the market. And now I like Nashville because Nashville's a little bit in between, right? You have that luxury feel. You have those high-end properties. You have those 1 to 1.2 and or 2 million single families that, you know, you can still get the high appreciation, but you also have the ability to kind of scale back if you want to get those 2 to 4 units. If you want to go above that, Nashville has some great options there, good suburbs, and it's very, very fast growing. It's a lot of different employers, good military base north of Nashville, Fort Campbell there. It's the second largest in the nation, just a really good market in general, and we've seen it kind of just burst through recessions. And so go take a look at it, look at the last 30 years of appreciation, the trends. It's been cool to see this as a market that has stayed true, just like San Antonio, through a lot of downturns. So there are 3 different markets, very different feels, but all great. And then once again, Tennessee and Texas are very landlord friendly. So if you're concerned about tenant rights and laws and evictions and what could happen if worst case scenarios come up, it might make more sense to go out of state. So I say out of state, we're in California here. Out of state for you might not be, maybe you're in Texas, but still, just the prices and the investments, they just sit a little different.
Yeah, Orange County snapshot. I mean, man, oh man, I think we may have covered some of this.
Just did.
Yeah, I think if you just to kind of hit the hammer home here is it's best suited for appreciation focused or high equity investors. If you have a lot of capital, right, the amount of capital that you will need to work with is the same amount of capital that might be able to buy you a home in cash in our other markets, right? My property in San Antonio is valued at, I don't know, $250,000, and we're talking about our median single family home price. It's actually hovering above $1 million here in Orange County now.
Totally.
So we're a little bit closer to $1.25 million. So that's kind of a down payment. And will that even get your property to cash flow in Orange County? Probably not, you know, realistically. Whereas a 25% down payment, 30% down payment in San Antonio, you're probably going to be cash flowing a little bit. So I think that's the difference in a nutshell.
Totally. Yeah. And that kind of, you know, we got a pros and cons slide here. Really good school districts. Chris hit on it. Really good schools from, you know, elementary all the way to universities. Really good property value appreciation. Chris mentioned it, and I'll say it again. If you take the average, it's like almost 7% over the last 30 years. It's pretty wild. It's like, you know that, okay, I'm not cash flowing today, but in 3 years from now, eventually I'll start cash flowing and I'll see insane appreciation in the meantime. And I'll bank on that appreciation so I can pull out money and go buy more property. Or I can, you know, sell the home and make a profit, right?
Yeah, rents tend to go up as well. We're not really mentioning that, but we do have a pretty consistent rent growth here in Orange County.
Definitely.
And that's something that we measure within our property management portfolio. We manage about 500 properties here in Southern California now. So
yeah,
we get to see the data in real time.
Totally. And the biggest con is just the high barrier of entry. Well, you know, we won't keep hitting the same point, but it's just expensive. So unless you have the ability to, if you're just getting started, maybe you can't afford California. If you can, there's a lot of potentials, a lot of upside, but it's more of a long-term play. Brian, tell us about San Antonio.
San Antonio, yeah. So there's a significantly lower median home price, so it's definitely different than California. Have you guys ever been to San Antonio yourselves?
I have.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Riverwalk.
Yeah, the Riverwalk is great. I'll tell you what is also great. Their gas station, that's like the craziest thing, largest.
Oh my gosh, Buc-ee's,
Buc-ee's,
right? Buc-ee's is so cool.
But yeah, what I noticed in San Antonio, and I was most recently there, was they've got a lot of new construction out there, but as I was driving around, I noticed that every road like that was coming in and out of these communities was just jam packed full of cars. Like it was way more traffic than I thought I would have experienced, and it's kind of bursting at the seams. Like they need to build, they need additional infrastructure, and they're doing that. They are adding that, and it just shows how much demand for those markets that there is within Texas. Whether those folks are coming from smaller towns in Texas or from California. We talked to a lot of Californians that are moving out there all the time.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but California, there's just so many people moving to that Texas area.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
And a big attraction is because of the significantly lower median home price compared to California, right?
So, yeah, if it's expensive here, let's move somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And you got, personally, the weather's a little too intense for me in Central Texas, but you got definitely the sun is out there, so you got good weather relative to a lot of other states in the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of hit on these, but just briefly go over pros and cons. Lower barrier of entry, strong cash flow, attractive cap rates if you're looking at the multifamily out there. Landlord friendly, still has long-term appreciation, something that's there. Maybe it won't be that 7, 8, 9% as like a coastal market. But yeah, I'd say if you give enough time, you'll see that 4 to 5% over time. And then I would caution, if you're looking at investing in a market like San Antonio, target newer construction unless you have an appetite for maintenance and you have a lot of cash reserves. We just find that these older properties just end up eating up your cash flow significantly when you have to replace roofs and water heaters. And it's not like a market where your rent's $4,000 or $5,000 a month and you can really kind of stack up cash. Like Chris said, he's only bringing in like $100, $150 a month in cash flow. So if you have to replace your roof, it goes quick. So just something to keep in mind. And that's why oftentimes our investors are targeting those newer construction projects.
Yeah, and the house that I own was built in 2022, right? So my maintenance, I've had one maintenance issue.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, right? So, it speaks to exactly why our clients are buying that type of asset. Nashville, I'm not as familiar with Nashville. I've been to Nashville. It's a great city, incredible music scene, but we've got a fantastic office and presence in the Clarksville and Nashville market. And what I think it probably compares a little bit as a middle ground between Orange County and San Antonio in terms of the asset classes, right? So a little bit higher price points, maybe a little bit more appreciation, a little less cash flow than San Antonio, but certainly a lot lower price point than Southern California.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also landlord friendly too. Keep that in mind. No state income tax. Taxes are something I'd like to talk about. I didn't even put it on the slide here, but taxes are really good for you. Property taxes. Sorry, property taxes are really beneficial for you as a landlord. If you're in Texas, they could be as high as like 2.5%, and they're reassessed every single year. Yes, you can contest it, but it does eat into your cash flow once again. But when you're looking at Tennessee, there's not like a perfect formula, but it's a lot closer to like 1%, sometimes less than that. So
less, yeah.
It really depends on if you're buying new construction, older homes, but still it's not the same assessed value, and it's not a lot, higher like that 2.5% like you see in Texas. So it helps with your long-term cash flow because also it's not increasing significantly.
Yeah, I think the big question is what market is right for your strategy. We've been asking you to ask yourself, do an internal dialogue, right? But these are the questions that you should really be understanding. And if you want to jump on a consultation, that's what we're here for, right? Which is to kind of help dig into this with you. But are you primarily seeking monthly income or long-term equity growth? I think in my experience, the folks that are a little bit older, maybe close to retirement age, are typically speaking more monthly income, more solid, just guarantee of that rent check coming in, whereas long-term equity growth is a major play for folks that are maybe in a little bit earlier professional career. Capital, huge determining factor, and investing locally or being comfortable going out of state. I mean, that's why we have our property management team designed the way that they are, which I would say is state of the art and incredibly white glove, which is to make or to help clients alleviate that uncertainty about investing out of state. Because I think once you talk to Heather or Michelle or many of our property managers out of state, you're going to realize like how professional they are, right? And how dialed in they are. That's why we offer our PM services. So which risk profile feels most comfortable to you, whether that's single family, multifamily, A, B, or C class, that's something that we can help you dial in as we jump on a consultation with you.
Absolutely. So, Chris, when does it make sense to go multifamily?
Yeah, I would say it really makes sense if A, you're capitalized on B, if you're ready for a project, I think multifamily is fantastic for those that understand value add renovation and cap rates, capitalization rates. So without like diving too deep into the weeds here, I think if you really understand how to increase the net operating income, you're going to be able to correspondingly increase the value of the property that you're acquiring. And that's going to require a little bit of sweat equity, which means, forced appreciation through improvements to the property, whether that's increasing the rents because you put in a brand new kitchen, right? Or that's maybe decreasing the water bill expense because you just submetered the entire building, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do with multifamily that will rapidly increase the value of it. But I think you need to understand like how to do that and then have the capital to do it.
Totally. And something else to consider is maintenance and vacancy. And the conversation about maintenance and vacancy isn't a matter of if, it's when, right? You're going to have tenants that move out. You're going to have maintenance at the property. So you've got to determine what is that percentage going to be. And so when we're talking about property classes, when you see an A-class property, right? Oftentimes maybe it's a little newer, a little nicer, better tenants, they take better care of the home. You won't have as much maintenance. That's why you put in about 8%, right? And that's not like every single month you're going to pay 8% of your rent. That's like factoring in, okay, maybe I replaced a water heater. Maybe I had something else that broke that needs to be fixed, right? And so I'm saving up. Here's the expense. Over time, over like, 2, 3, 4 years, you'll see it's about 8% of that rental income. And so it's a good, checking point of let's put away 8%, save it for a rainy day. And then as you see the property class decrease, so that B class, C class property, you'll start to see that maintenance go up. So when you have those older homes where, the tenants aren't taking as good care of it and the house is just needing work in general because things are going out, lifespans are ending, you'll start to see that percentage creep up more and more and more. So that's something to take into account. And then when you jump up units, you'll also notice that it's going to jump up your maintenance and vacancy, especially your maintenance, right? Chris mentioned it. You're looking at like a 5, 6, 7, 8, plus unit building. Just know you're going to have a lot more tenant turnover and a lot more maintenance in general. So if you're okay with that, just understand these figures. If not, maybe that sways your decision of, hey, maybe I say maybe one class or a single unit property, right? Maybe that's just a little easier for me in A-class property. I don't really want to have to think about, expenses that come up out of nowhere. I just want to know that it's going to be very simple. It's going to be easy, something newer. Builder takes care of it via warranty. So wherever you're sitting on that, that's something that we can help determine with you.
Let's talk a little bit about property picks. I think one of the coolest things that we offer is a really, really interactive pro forma on our website. So we're going to show you guys a pro forma breaking down an investment duplex in San Antonio. Is a little more cash flow focused. We're going to quickly just go over the pro forma to give you guys a sense of what's on there, but you can jump on our website and plug and play with interest rates and purchase price and your down payment and maintenance and vacancy ratios, right? So if you think I talked to an investor a few years ago that had specialized in buying new construction. He'd been doing this for 20 years and he had a lot of experience. And he saw that we attributed, between 5 and 8% for vacancy and maintenance for new construction in that initial hold period. And he was like, my experience is that maintenance is like 1%. So I'm going to put 1% on there. And I was like, really? Okay, that's up to you, right? But you can do that if you're on our website. But we'll kind of go through what we've picked out, what we think is likely scenarios for this particular investment property.
Yeah, Brian, you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a property in San Antonio here. You can see the highlighted part, most important part, monthly income. But you got the breakdown of the property, capital needed. So this is great to kind of see what the capital is needed to get into a property. And on some other slides, you'll see other properties. It's going to change a little bit. So less capital on this one, which is great. This might be, more of a first time investment or not even that, but just less capital. So maybe you don't have a ton of capital. You're not going for the Orange County market. Like this is obviously a great market to go in and a great property. You see the gross rent, taxes, insurance, mortgage, HOA, everything broken down. And you can kind of play with those numbers and see what it's going to look like depending on your mortgage and what the cash flow is going to be on that property.
Absolutely. And I love everything you pointed out. He went down the line. The cool thing is on the website, you can be as conservative as possible. If you say, well, what's worst case scenario? My insurance. What's worst case scenario? My rents, right? Let's just say I'm renting way below what you guys think it is. And obviously we oftentimes manage multiple, sometimes 10, 20 plus units in the community. We know the rents. We're very familiar with it. And so oftentimes those rents aren't just comps, but they're like, we have 10 other units rented for this amount. But you can still be conservative with your numbers and say, okay, now I know that I'm comfortable with if everything doesn't go correct, if I have really high insurance and, my taxes are high and I don't rent it for what I want and I have super high vacancy, then I'll still be okay with this number. You can play the round. Something else to note here is you'll see every now and then where it says under your mortgage payment, there might be an interest rate below what market rate would be. So you see about 6.875 for like a par rate, depending on, your qualification, credit, and, points. But this one says 3.5. And that's because there are developers out there, and we can get into this on a consultation later, but they offer lower interest rates to investors by paying a lender up front to offer their investors a lower rate. So instead of reducing the purchase price, they put it towards the interest rate, and you'll find that the cash flow goes much further than if they were to just take a little bit off the top. And so it's a creative way for investors to get a property and have a little bit better cash flow running. And that's usually with developers. Okay, let's talk about a new build pick. And this is that in-between market in Nashville. Dude, tell us about this one, Chris.
Yeah, these are really interesting developments. This is right nestled in Franklin, Tennessee, which is a very high income area of kind of a suburb of Nashville. Median single family home price over there is like pretty similar to Orange County. It's like $700,000-$800,000 off the top of my head, which means that this is going to be this is actually a townhouse. This is going to be much more of like an A bordering on luxury property over there. But it still cash flows really well. What I like about this community is close proximity to the downtown. It's like, I don't know, 20 minutes, about a mile walking distance. And so it's a walkable area. Also, this is a community where the majority of the homes have been set aside for primary occupants. So the development is 40 townhouses. Only roughly about 15 to 20 of those are going to be set aside for investors, and the rest are going to be primary or occupied. Why I think that's interesting is I think that's going to help appreciation long term. I also think it's going to help with the long term maintenance of the community in general, because the majority of the folks that are in the community and reside there are not just going to be renters, but they're going to be folks that have a mortgage and are there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So that's why I really love this property. I think there's a lot of upside for long term appreciation, and it does cash flow, which is rare for an A-class or luxury property.
Totally. And I just want to take a peek again. So you saw this is a brand new construction duplex in San Antonio, and we're about 550,000. And this is that in between. So if you're like, hey, I want a luxury class property, but I can't afford, California. I want the appreciation that comes with it. I want the high class tenant. I want the, hassle-free, low headache. Well, this is an option. And that's why we're kind of taking a look at different markets. Is you can get that asset class that you desire, but maybe not in the market that you desire. Maybe there's another market that gives you that because you can't afford it in this market. And maybe San Antonio is the market that you choose, right? Because now you can go in the high 3s and still get an A to luxury class property. Whereas here you might have to be in the 7s. So it once again determines on how much capital you have. This one's great because, for the price, you have about $700 monthly cash flow. Let's take a look at Orange County. And this one's really cool because we actually sold this home recently. By we, I mean Chris. And we know what the metrics are. We know what someone was willing to pay. What is the investor looking at? And now what might you look at?
Yeah, so this was a really interesting deal. And this is going to be more of like I would say, qualified as a C-class property. And it's so interesting seeing the comparison. We just looked at like a B, an A, and luxury property in San Antonio, in Nashville. And now we're looking at a C-class in Los Angeles at a much higher price point and much less cash flow. And we just sold it in 7 days for full list price. Like, why would someone do that? That sounds insane, right? If you look at it, it says a negative $1,000 in cash flow. Like, why would a buyer do that? What we talked about when it's appropriate to buy multifamily is if you have the right strategy and you are well capitalized. So first of all, the buyer that purchased this property came in with roughly 50% cash, right? So they're putting a lot of capital down. I put in 30% just as a down payment for what a lot of investors we were looking at on the financing aspect, but our actual end buyer put in 50% cash. Now, what did they look at when it came to this property? Why was this attractive day one with essentially a negative 1,000 cash flow? Why does this make sense? Well, first of all, one of the components that's really challenging to navigate in Los Angeles and Orange County is our tenant laws, right? We have a lot of tenant laws and we have rent control as well. Now, most properties that are multifamily, meaning duplexes all the way up to 200 unit buildings, have some component of rent control here. Now, Maywood's rent control says that your rent increases to tenants are limited to around 3% per year. Now, that's for units that are 2 units or more. Now, this is a triplex. This is a 3-unit building. The owner strategically changed this from a triplex into individual condos. So now he broke these down from individual condos or into individual condos, which means there's individual parcels, which means it's no longer one 3-unit building subject to rent control, 3 different units now. Okay, so we actually had to sell these as 3 different units, even though they're all in one building and it's one buyer. What does that mean? Is that means it's no longer subject to rent control, and it means that the end buyer can increase their rents to market rent. Well, the rent that's actually on the leases is about $1,000 below market rent. So this says gross rent of $6,700. Market rent is a lot closer to $9,700.
Wow.
The buyer, literally, we just talked to the buyer's realtor. The buyer's realtor just sent the 60-day notice to increase the rents on all the tenants by $1,000 each, okay, which is market rent. 2 of the tenants are going to move out. She's going to actually, because they can't afford the rent, which is obvious for very many reasons, which is they've been renting for way under market for about 10 years. And so they can't afford to pay market rent. They're going to voluntarily move out. That buyer is going to put in probably $15,000, $20,000 of improvements in each unit. So she's got cash in her pocket to now turn the rents into closer to like $3,400, $3,500 per unit, which is going to just skyrocket her cash flow. But she had to have the plan. She had to have the knowledge, right? And she's got to have the cash. So that's when you can buy multifamily, is if you know those aspects and you understand what that's going to do to the value of the building. When she increases the rents closer to $10,000 total for the building, the property's not worth $1.35 million. It's going to be worth $1.7. So she's going to increase her equity position by hundreds of thousands of dollars with just really good knowledge. So
That's awesome.
that's what multifamily means.
Sounds like you should have bought that one, Chris.
I should have.
Yeah, Chris, what are you doing?
It was a great deal, and I knew how to sell it. But at the end of the day, I think we're talking about risk and reward and all this stuff. It can be a bear to understand all these things, and I think you need a lot of experience and know-how and a good realtor on your side. But if you have those components, then buying something like this can make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And we'll kind of go through these last ones quick. What are next steps? Well, let's get a one-on-one. Let's talk to you. Let's figure out what is your goal, what is your roadmap, what is your investment strategy, and where can we go from there? I kind of just want to open up to you guys if you want to leave with any last or final notes before we wrap up here. I know we're a little past 6 o'clock.
Yeah. As you mentioned, let's just talk one-on-one, but we want to know more about you and your goals. The only way we can do that and really help you is by sitting down with a consultation. And I love nothing more than introducing our prospective clients to our team members, right? Which are our property managers, which are our leasing agents, our realtors out of state that help identify some of these incredible investment opportunities in Asheville, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, right? Those folks are incredibly knowledgeable. They live in the market and they eat and breathe real estate. And it's nothing brings me more pleasure than to listen to them talk about their home market. So if you're interested in learning more about Houston, let's have a conversation. I'd love to introduce you to Rachel Page or Nashville, Clayton Hines, or whomever, right? We've got different folks for different strokes. So give us a call and we'll be able to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, I mean, I think Marshall Reddick as a whole, we're just so willing to serve and really try to build those relationships with everyone we come across. So just like you were saying, Chris, whether it's connecting people in different areas for different properties. Like, we're so ready to serve and just help other people, and just can't wait to build those relationships with you. So can't wait to talk to some of you guys hopefully in the future. But yeah, no, that's what we do here, and we love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I know you could have done anything with your Tuesday night. We appreciate you spending it here. Have a great night. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information's here. We will send the basically recording and slides deck in the next 24 to 48 hours. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us, and thank you guys again.